Back in the latter half of 2001, an anime series titled Fruits Basket would air and later become one of the most iconic shoujo animes to be released in the 2000s. Animated by Studio Dean, Fruits Basket began about halfway through its manga's lifespan and therefore only covered the earlier parts of the full Fruits Basket story. The show is classified as a romantic comedy slash slice of life primarily, with a few supernatural elements, and it was very ambitious in that it focused on a wide cast of characters and depth, as opposed to just a few main protagonists. At least, that's what I think it did. I never watched the 2001 version of this show, but I was recommended the reboot before the first season aired back in 2019, and the show sounded right up my alley. While the first adaptation was only one 25-episode season, this new remake is going to be 3 25-episode seasons, the first and second having already aired in 2019 and 2020 respectively, with the third on its way scheduled for a summer 2021 release. Because of how much longer this remake is than the original, it's very clear that they were trying to more closely replicate the manga this time around and really flesh out the story and the characters. It's definitely worth noting that while I can't speak to how loyal the reboot is to the original series, with the first 2 seasons in the books as of last summer, I can definitely say that they went above and beyond with this new adaptation. The story of Fruits Basket centers around Toru Honda, a high school girl who finds herself homeless after her mother dies in a car crash. After briefly living in a tent on the countryside, she comes across the Soma household occupied by 2 of her male classmates, Yuki and Kyo, and their guardian Shigure. Toru quickly befriends these 3, and they all agree that she should live with them until she's able to get back on her feet. It's soon learned after that Yuki and Kyo are not only cousins, but also intense rivals who hate each other's guts. Toru ends up learning a very strange secret about them when she tries to break up a fight between the 2, and she accidentally trips into Kyo, and he transforms into a cat. Don't you just hate when that happens? It's explained later that each member of the Soma family is cursed and will transform into their zodiac animal whenever they're hugged by somebody of the opposite sex. Kyo is the cat in the family, Yuki is the rat, Shigure is the dog, and there are 10 other Soma family members that live outside of the house that have an animal that they will transform into. Toru vows not to tell anyone of this secret, and out of trust and for the sake of their friendship, they decide to not erase it from her memory. Which apparently is a thing they can do. They never show it. I guess the Somas have a neuralizer from Men in Black or something, I don't know. Over the course of Season 1, you start to meet more of the Zodiac members in the family and which animal they are, as well as their relationships to the other Somas. As strange and compelling as this phenomenon is, however, interestingly enough, it starts to take a bit of a backseat in terms of how the plot moves forward from there. And while this whole weird animal transformation thing is always something that you're curious about in the back of your mind, the show opts to instead hyper-focus on character development, which is part of the reason why I think this show is so damn good. But I'll get into why that is in a bit. If there's one undeniable improvement over the original, it's the absolutely stunning animation. And that's not even in comparison to the old one, it's one of the best looking anime I've seen yet. Movement and frame rate are clean, colors are amazing, resolution is crystal clear, and the lighting effects are fantastic. The way sunset scenes or like moonlight scenes look in this show is honestly one of my favorite things about it. You can also tell that they put a lot of effort into how they made their characters look as well. You can tell their designs, colors, and outfits were all chosen very deliberately to reflect their personality, and the art direction deserves a lot of credit for making them so relatable and likable. I think they did a fantastic job at modernizing them while still keeping them recognizable if you have seen the original. Music is very powerful also, and it's got a lot of banger openings and endings, Prism being my favorite OP from Season 2, and Eden being my favorite ED also from Season 2. Some Joey certified songs for your weed playlists out there. So how does Fruits Basket do character development better than most shows? Well, first of all, there are very few side characters in this show at all. People that seem like they would be unnecessary to the plot end up having an important storytelling role at some point. Of course, you have Toru and the 13 Zodiac characters, but that doesn't stop the show from highlighting all of the people that are relevant in Toru, Yuki, and Kyo's lives. I feel like no characters demonstrate this more so than Toru's longtime friends, Arisa and Saki, along with Yuki's student council members that he works with in Season 2. Although at first all of these characters seem to exist solely to add more depth to the main characters, they all eventually get their chance in the spotlight and go through their own unique emotional struggles. Which is already something I have to applaud Fruits Basket for, because most slice of life shows have a problem with just throwing in boring filling characters just for the sake of adding some variety to the cast. Having this many characters done so well in a single show makes it very likely that you'll relate to at least a handful of them on an emotional level. With so much care and attention given to every single character, you're left with a sense of understanding on the way they present themselves, and it makes interactions involving these characters a lot more meaningful. As for the Zodiac characters, they all have a pretty wild and dark past, as you can probably imagine. And since there are 13 of them, there are a ton of backstories to look forward to. The viewer is aware from the start that these characters exist and each have a corresponding animal, but until they're actually formally introduced, they're only alluded to and left to imagination. And therein lies what I think is the genius of Fruits Basket, this concept of having these 13 mysterious humans that can transform into animals draws you in and makes you curious to meet all of them. It's only after you realize the stories they have to tell and what they've gone through you start to look forward to meeting the human behind the animal as opposed to the animal behind the human. I really like the characters in this show, if you couldn't tell. Especially Toru though. So how does Toru fit the protagonist role here? Besides being orphaned in her adolescence and becoming close to the Somas, she just appears to be an upbeat but very ordinary girl. I mean, she's not turning into like a zebra or anything like these other dudes. Well, when she's not being the adorable, clumsy airhead that she is, she's very perceptive of other people's emotions and how to navigate around them. She meets characters that are cheery and talkative just like her, but she also meets characters that are too nervous to open up to her or are very cold and don't want to associate themselves with her. But no matter how similar or dissimilar these characters are to herself, she can notice when something's bothering them. And no matter how cold or closed off that character reacts when they're confronted about it, Toru knows how to get them to open up without overstepping her boundaries. No dynamic represents this more strikingly than hers and Isusu's in Season 2. Initially, we see Isusu actively avoiding Toru whenever they encounter one another, but after Toru shows her kindness during her hospital recovery, she breaks down in tears and we get to learn about her mistreatment from both Akito and her parents. This scene completely transforms what was once a rather unlikable character into one that is understandably cold-hearted and jaded because of what happened to her. I think it shows that Toru's role in the show is being an endless fountain of kindness and understanding to the people around her, and it just so happens that the Soma have a lot of grievances to air out. Not only is she eager to meet new people, but she's also incredibly determined to do what she can to make them feel happy again. As a way to repay the Somas for giving her a place to stay in her time of need, sure, but more importantly, I think it's to pass on some of that same kindness that her mother had, who's frequently alluded to throughout the show. Toru is certainly no stranger to dealing with trauma of her own, and her ability to turn that trauma into compassion and optimism for others is something as admirable as it is beautiful. And this isn't something that happens once or twice or even just a couple times. There are countless examples of this throughout the first 2 seasons so far, and it's so powerful every single time. And I always start playing the sad violin music, and it's like, oh, my heart. That's what I love about Fruits Basket. You watch the first episode, and it sets up this whole Zodiac animal gimmick, and then what the show ends up becoming is, like, so unbelievably more significant than that. It's not a show about people who are animals. It's a show about people, period. It's a show about love, it's a show about emotions, it's a show about healing, trust, being able to put your faith in others, unless that person's name is Akito and they're a bitch. And I think it shows how important it is to surround yourself with people like Toru who care about you and want to understand you. And hell, maybe teaching all of us to be a little bit more like Toru ourselves. I think the world could really use more Torus out there. It's also worth noting that for as heavy and emotional as I'm describing the show, it's got just as much, if not more, lightheartedness in it too. The show is cute, it's funny, it's self-aware, it's very uplifting when it's not tearing your heart into pieces. And I know I kind of downplayed the whole Zodiac curse quite a bit in this video to prove a point, but it seems like Season 3 is really gonna finally give us some answers on what the future holds for the Somas. And address maybe the possibility of lifting the curse even, I don't know, we'll have to see. If this show sounds at all intriguing to you, I implore you to watch it and maybe catch up by the time Season 3 rolls around. I can't wait to see more and then cry when it's over. And if you enjoyed this video or the show, or you just feel like calling me a weeb, feel free to tell me in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Thanks for watching.